CJ, welcome to This Is Horror.
Thank you. So glad to be here.
Yeah, it is a long time coming because we've wanted to talk to you for a few years now, and we've been going back and forth with your publicist, but now finally it's
Have we not
happening.
talked? Have we? Oh, that's crazy. Okay, well, I'm glad to finally be here.
Yeah, I like that you're not even sure about it either. You're like, wait, we didn't talk?
I know. I kind of thought we did.
I
Well,
love that.
okay, but some of us met in Austin and.
Yeah. Well, as we haven't spoken before, what I'd like to do is go all the way back to the beginning of your life because what I want to know is what some of the early life lessons were that you learnt growing up.
Wow. Um, well, it's a good day to ask. I think I was born on an Ash Wednesday. Today is Ash Wednesday. Not that I practice that anymore. But things things that I was like taught young or things that I okay, probably the biggest thing is so I grew up in Texas and my family was very big on like can do attitude and doing things. And so very supportive of art and everything else, but it's like you have to be kind of doing things at all times. And something I was taught as a kid that I never realized was really like a huge gift that as an adult I realize is very rare and amazing is I was really taught that if I just worked hard enough at anything, I would probably succeed. And I think that really kind of shaped who I am because it really can instill this feeling that like okay, you're going to get knocked down a million times, but if you just don't stop, it eventually will work out. And that really worked in my favor. But I was like a rough and tumble kid. I don't know. I think I was like physically delicate, but like I wanted to be like a tomboy. And so I was always trying to keep up, running around and things, but usually it was like poking around in the creek, catching tadpoles, that kind of thing.
And in terms of having these values of hard work instilled in you from an early age, how did that factor in to your writing? I mean, were you writing from a young age? And was there almost a conflict, or were your parents like, hang on a minute, you got these chores to be doing? What are you doing with that writing?
No, I think my parents really encouraged me to try everything and really just kind of see what worked. And again, that was like a big gift. I was an only child, so there was definitely like a lot of room for me to to figure out my stuff. I thought I was more of a performer as a kid. I liked dancing and all those dancing and acting and all those things, and they were very supportive of that. But chores were like a part of life too. It was just kind of um yeah, like as long as I wasn't too idle. But I think that has translated into my work a lot. And it took me I'm jumping ahead, but it took me so many years to be able to get an agent, to be able to get published. And it was freaking brutal. And I really think all that kind of early life stuff, like, really kind of kept me going, which is like, just don't stop. Just as long as I don't stop, like, sort of statistically, something should happen over time. And then luckily it did.
Yeah, and if I understand correctly, you didn't realize you were writing horror until a teacher kind of pointed out to you that what you're doing is actually horror.
Yeah, in my like mid 20s. And I didn't even really think I wanted to be a writer until my 20s. But yeah, I had never read a Stephen King. I'd never read anything. I read Library at Mount Char, which I didn't think of as horror. I thought of it as like fantasy. And it was my favorite book. And it was funny for this professor to be like, I think you should be reading horror novels. And I was like, oh, no, no, I can't handle that stuff. It's too scary for me. And then turns out I was totally wrong. So
Yeah, that's so fascinating because I mean, throughout your books, there are so many horror nods and horror influences. And so you wouldn't think that you hadn't, read a Stephen King book until your 20s.
Well, sometimes I think that can help, right? Like it's almost like it's easier for me to write about locations that aren't the places I've lived the longest because you have the outsider's perspective. So coming to it late, I didn't really have like a lifetime of relationship with like The Shining, for example, or any of these stories. Like it was just sort of I saw it all as an adult laid out in front of me, and it was magical and a very cool experience.
And I wonder too, how did film factor into your childhood? What were the movies that you were watching from a young age, and when, if at all, did horror come into play?
This is probably where the horror snuck in. I was very into Rocky Horror Picture Show. Like that was my favorite. I wasn't really sheltered at all as a kid. I did grow up in church all the time, but I honestly think that was more like childcare than although my family still go. But yeah, I loved Rocky Horror, loved it. I loved Tremors and Mars Attacks. So it's like looking back, I'm like, well, yeah, I think it was always there a little bit. My dad was really into Hitchcock. My dad does this thing. He tells everybody still, Texas man. He's like, I don't know how she got into this horror thing. His favorite movie when I was a kid was Psycho. And he would always be like, look at the stills and look at how Hitchcock did all these shots, one after another. That was so there was always something around, or the monsters or whatever. But it just, for some reason, like there's a disconnect, people kind of make up their minds that that's not really horror. Saw is horror, or The Ring is horror, or whatever.
Yeah, I think it's just having a narrow definition rather than an all-encompassing definition
Yeah.
of horror. But
And I
Psycho
think
and
most people do,
yeah,
you know?
yeah. No, I think so. And I mean, Psycho is one of the original, in some senses, horror films. I mean, of course, if you go way back, the Nosferatu is an original horror film. But in terms of really, I guess, paving the way for the modern era, it's Psycho and it's Robert Bloch and it's Hitchcock.
And they're so good. They're
Yeah.
they're so freaking good and suspenseful, and yeah, those are awesome.
Well, I knew we would have to go here at some point, and it's under 10 minutes, but I have to ask, how did religion play a part in your upbringing?
Yeah. So, my family is very Catholic, and it's not just cultural, it's definitely, like, practicing, but it always, like, terrified me. I think I was a very literal thinker as a kid, and so I would go to Sunday school and church and choir and all these places, and they would tell us these stories of like, if you think a sinful thought, God and the devil and demons and angels and everybody, Jesus, have all heard it, and now you have eternal consequences unless you go in this small room and confess it to this like old man. And yeah, it scared the shit out of me. I also had like across from my bed. It's funny because like I grew up in Austin, and like Austin back in the day was like so small town, like music town. It was so cool, and my parents were in the musician scene. It was really cool. Um, but like I also had this like crucifix painting, or Christ on the cross across from my bed, and it was like he's bleeding and starving, and it's a black background, and it just like was terrifying, and it was like the last thing I saw every night before I went to sleep. So anyway, was convinced I was the most sinful, definitely going to hell, definitely like everything I was at, questioning everything I wasn't supposed to be. And I had one very religious parent, one parent who was an artist and didn't really care about it, but it was a weird, it was always there, but I always knew I was outside it, if that makes sense.
No, it makes total sense. And
Mhm.
actually, you mentioning the painting of Christ has given me a kind of flashback to my childhood. So I was brought up in a Christian household. Happy to say I've recovered from that now, but I
Hey.
had I had these recurring nightmares when I was like 5, 6, 7 years old, and I'd see Christ on the cross bleeding, and then I'd just hear these voices being like, "You did this. This is your fault. You made him suffer. He did it for you." And
Wow.
it like really, I should make some sort of weird short film about it because then like it would zoom in and get closer and closer to this bloody gruesome Christ, and the voices will get louder, and then I'd wake up feeling quite bad about myself. I'm not sure that there's a
Yeah.
question attached to this, but you
Mhm.
gave me
No,
that
that's
flashback.
amazing. You should I don't know if you should make that film. It's like too that seems like too real to me.
Yeah, yeah.
But it sounds amazing and so, like, exactly evocative of that experience, and, yeah, man, wow. It really stays with you. It's like you can get rid of it, but there's always that little bit that's just buried deep in
Mhm.
here somewhere.
Yeah, yeah, that's
It's
it.
it's funny because it took me a while to realize I grew up Catholic as well, and I had one. My mom still goes to church. Why don't you go to church? And I'm like, why don't they arrest pedophiles, priests? But anyway. But it, and that's like one reason. But another reason that I quit going to church was when I was in college, and I would spend time in the library and mostly reading like esoteric books and stuff like that because they just had all the stuff that I never could find. And I'm like, wow, that's all here. And I'm like, one day I was in the library and I just realized that going to that mass, I'm like, that's an occult ritual. Catholic mass is a fucking occult ritual. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to be part of a cult. And so that was kind of like one of the things that I stopped going because I'm like, this just after that it didn't feel right, and
Yeah,
I'm like it's like the thing occult is hidden, esoteric and mysticism and all that. Every culture has a religion, so even you can almost say that being secular is like a religion, so it's
yeah, yeah,
yeah, so it's just I get exactly where you're coming from. And my dad was the artist one, so he was always like, "You ain't got to go to church. You ain't gotta get when you're 60, get you a job. You have to work on Sundays. You don't have to go to damn church. I ain't going to church."
genius.
And that's what I
Brilliant.
did.
Wow. Yeah, I think the difference and what the whole sin and shame and the sort of like in order to atone, there's this chain of command, that you report to be absolved is like such a beautiful authority scenario. I think it's really like it's very effective and yeah, not to in this fun day and age.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's a fascinating thing having to sort of like beg forgiveness of so many men.
Hmm. And it's like 1 degree away from being bureaucratic if you think about it. I mean, it's almost like, well, no, 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 you can't confess that to me. We have to. You have to confess that up a little higher.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
a more serious offense. So
yeah.
let's get the forms ready and we'll get you to the bishop. And I was like, what's is the bishop here? Do I have to go? I have to set an appointment to go talk to the bishop about I lusted. Oh, oh
Yeah,
well. Oh,
yeah.
I lusted again. Damn it.
Look
What are
at
we gonna do
this.
about this?
Yeah, you can confess anything away in the church, so
Yes, it's true.
yeah.
But that's it. When you can confess anything, then there are no real consequences, and then bad actions become almost meaningless. There's no punishment. Just you do a few Hail Marys or you say sorry for what you've done. So no
Yeah.
accountability.
Well, I suppose they think it's the punishment is done after, not by
Yeah.
not by them. But yeah, Well, here we all are somehow.
Yeah.
We've made it.
Right. And I want to know, what was the moment, or what were the moments when you started questioning religion? And then equally, when did it graduate to you realizing actually this is dangerous?
Uh, I do remember specific moments. So there was like one was in Sunday school, and I put this in American Rapture, but one of the Sunday school teachers said specifically, little girls are born into more sin than little boys. And I remember just like looking around the room and thinking, like, that can't be right. Like if we're all born into sin, wouldn't it at least be like equal? Or and I raised my hand and I said, really? Like, is that? And she said yes. And oh man, there were actually a few. But I think the biggest thing for me is that when I thought about it, because I am kind of a literal thinker, so I took everything to be just truth, right? Like I listened. I was not allowed to color or play games in church. Like I was only child. I wasn't talking to anybody. I was just listening. And I would actually read the stories, and I believed it all when I was really young. And I thought about it, and I just thought it didn't sit right with me, this idea that, first of all, if anyone hadn't heard of Jesus, like just happened to be born in the wrong place or the wrong circumstances, that they wouldn't have the opportunity or the same opportunity to sort of like go to heaven automatically. So that seemed weird to me. uh Two, that if you did things wrong, you have like 80 years on earth at most, or whatever, maybe now like 100. We're living a little longer. uh and then if you don't do things right in those 100 years and follow all the rules, then you have what, just eternity to be punished for it. And the punishing felt like really crazy to me. Just like, what kind of, everybody always said God is good, God is kind, and I'm like, it sounds like God just is burning everybody alive all the time. I don't know, like it sounds like God is actually the opposite. He's like super punishing and super judging and super frightening. And I think that just like didn't feel right. And I don't know if there was a single moment where I was like, no, this is not it. But I hated going to church. I was always scared of it. I would cry and kick and scream, and it was like a whole thing. But I also didn't like that we had to dress up. I felt like, I remember being told that, you had to like really look nice. And I remember being told that that was like what God would want. And I was like, I just don't think God would care. Like, God gave me shoulders. Like, why do my shoulders have to be covered? Like, what's so wrong with shoulders? All of the, it's just like probably so many small things that just didn't feel right to me. And a lot of, I'm trying so hard not to be like political, although it's impossible. A lot of people who called themselves Christians who were so angry and had a lot of hate toward a lot of types of people. And that didn't seem to match to me what we were being taught, which was that you're not supposed to hate people and you're supposed to welcome people. And like that was Jesus's whole thing. So anyway, that's it was all the things. So, but I loved the incense. I loved the I think ultimately like the Catholic thing is super like, it's got that sort of gothic, amazing, aesthetic, at least. So there's a lot of fun with that.
I mean, luckily, you can walk away from Catholicism and still burn incense and still have all the Gothic architecture
So
that you desire.
true. So true. We all win.
And I mean, I understand that for a long time, you were, even after recovering from religion, let's say, you were afraid to say the word demon and you didn't
Yeah.
watch The Exorcist. I don't even know if you have watched The Exorcist yet.
Um, I d I might have watched, I don't know if I have, like, it's fun, I even get a little flutter. Um, Yeah, when I was writing I wrote American Rapture over like 10 years, which I'm sure you've heard me say. But yeah, like even in the writing of it in my 20s, like writing the word demon so much, I was like, oh, am I just inviting this in? You know? And this was after living in New York City forever, like not being religious, but it sticks. It sticks. I'm good now. I write horror. I'm not worried about that now. Now I'm worried about real life stuff, but yeah, I don't think you're going to be possessed by feeling attracted to somebody. I don't think that is a thing that's going to happen in this world.
And do you ever have any kind of lingering, I suppose, fear of God or just lingering hang-ups from that religious background? Because I mean, even for me, even though I'm like, well, I'm recovered, there can sometimes be at your weakest moments, like, what if? What if it's actually true? Or what if God is judging me right now? What if I'm going to hell?
It's like uh it's funny because I have a lot of Christians in my family, obviously, as we've said. I also have a lot of hunters in my family. And I'm not being prescriptive, but like, I don't eat meat. Uh if there's a spider in my house, I save it. I don't kill bugs. Like I take them outside. You know, I try really hard to be a good person in this life, and I think if there is sorry, that's my dog. If there is a God who really has a real issue with how I'm living, then there was probably no shot for me anyway. You know what I mean? So I think there's no pleasing a God like that. So might as well just try and be a good person in any way I can in this life and see what happens. And it's that joke everybody always tells, like all the good people will be in hell. And I kind of think that's true by their definition. Like all the fun people, also some bad people, like actually, but uh the rest of us too.
I mean, the music is gonna be absolutely awesome.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
no doubt.
got so many greats.
Literally everybody.
Yeah, basically, yeah. And I like too when you were kind of advocating for yourself caring for animals that your dog interjected and
Yeah.
the dog is like, "Yep,
I don't even
I
know what she was barking about, so that she might have just been agreeing.
yeah, no, I like that." Do you have many dogs? I know that you've said before you take in rescue dogs, so I'm not sure how many we're dealing with.
Yeah, so we had 4, we just lost one last month, but, so now we have 3, and, that spicy one who just barked, she is a two-legged Chihuahua, and she's, like, totally amazing. Uh Very funny, very sweet dog. They're great. They're hilarious, they're goofy, they're so sweet, and they just really kind of, make our lives so awesome and chaotic.
Yeah. Uh, that's so wonderful to hear. And you alluded to this earlier, but I want to know, why did you move from New York to LA? What was the initial impetus?
That was, I had excuse me, my mom's dog, who I'm watching actually wants to join. Uh,
So lovely. For those watching the video, you just got a sneak preview.
It's very cute. I had hiked on the West Coast in my early 20s, and I totally fell in love with the mountains, and I couldn't stop thinking about them. And so I turned to my boyfriend, same one as now back then, and I said, "Okay, I want to move. I want it to be the West Coast. I love you. I hope you want to come with me. And you can pick the city." And so we looked at the Bay Area and we looked at LA, and we just knew more people in LA. And so that was that. And been it was a really great move for us. And then we were living there, and then the fires happened. And that's why we've been kind of on the road since the fires. So for about a year.
Yeah, and I understand that your kind of relationship with LA it started off a little bit tumultuous because you didn't like it to begin with. So I'd love to hear the journey from moving, thinking, oh shit, have I made a terrible mistake here, to then falling in love.
Yeah, uh, I I think it's common, like, leaving New York City because you get in such a zone living there, and I had been there I moved there in high school and stayed for, like, 10 years, so and my boyfriend's from there. Uh, that it can be really hard moving other places because, 1, there's this kind of insidious thing, that, like, if you live in Manhattan this is like a sickness, and I tell my friends who still live there, but, like, I think people can't see it. Like, you start to believe it's, like, the only city in the world that matters. Like, there's a weird thing in New York that you just, like you're like, "This is the place," and every other place is sort of baffling, like, how do people live that way? And, I didn't think I was one of those people, and then I left New York and I was like, "Oh my god, what how am I supposed to go to the bar? Like, what am I supposed to drive to the bar, but then, like, I can't drink?" And this is, like suddenly, like, I just didn't quite know how to, like, live. Um, and feeling a little bit outside what I had viewed as the center of the world, which was New York City, but, it turns out it's not. It's a great place, but every place is a great place. Uh, yeah, so LA, I panicked. I felt like I love New Yorkers as people, and I had a hard time. I could find ex-New Yorkers easily in LA, but, it just I don't know, I couldn't find my place in the ecosystem, and so then COVID happened, and, I wanted to get to know the city because we were living there, and I had moved us there, and so I started reading a ton about it and driving around during COVID and, like, kind of exploring from my car, and that was writing Maeve. And I ended up like, I always say this, but I think it's really true. I think if you look closely at anything for long enough, like, you'll find a way to fall in love with it, and, that is kinda what happened. As a sidebar, I was scared that would happen with looking back at my childhood religion in American Rapture, but, we're good. But yeah, I love LA. It's very itself. It's got issues, but man, that is a wonderful city to get to be a part of and like really some amazing people.
Yeah, it's interesting too that you went from New York, which is the publishing capital of America, possibly the world, to living in LA, which is, I'd say, the movie capital of
Yeah.
LA and almost certainly the world. So that begs the question, are you also screenwriting, or do you have aspirations to get into film?
No, and, as an aside with that, the other New York thing is, like, talking about how, like, nobody in LA reads, like, New Yorkers love to say that. But I got to LA and there are like over 60 independent bookstores in just the city of LA. It's actually a huge reading city, which is super cool. Um, I do not like I'm not good at writing anything other than books. Even short stories I really struggle with. I guess you could it's up for debate if I'm good at writing books, but I'm definitely not good at writing the anything else. So, yeah, I would love to have things adapted. I did have an option out, on Maeve for about 3 years, and then it just got reverted, so we're taking it back on the market now, so I won't write it, but I would love to see things adapted.
Yeah, well, fingers crossed for that film
Thank you.
adaptation. And I mean, so often that's the way that it goes. There's a lot of kind of waiting and seeing what happens, and it's far more tumultuous and volatile than the publishing world. I mean, the Hollywood and the film world is a different beast entirely.
Yeah, and it's amazing how many people it takes to pull anything off, like, I have a team with my books, but it's very few of us. And with putting a show together or a movie, the number of people who have to be the exact right person and love the project and back the project, it's just like, I don't know how anybody makes anything. It's incredible.
Now, of course, we want to talk about Maeve Fly and American Rapture. Now, ordinarily we would start with your first book, Maeve Fly, but as I understand it, you wrote the first draft of American Rapture way before Maeve Fly, so I actually want to start there. So it took 13 years until publication. Tell us about the stages from the idea initially coming to you to the first draft and then the final published book.
Uh, so I had an open elective course my last semester of undergrad, and I took a writing class. And I was reading a lot of like dystopian YA fantasy at the time. And I wrote the beginning of what I thought would be a book like that. And it was fun and I enjoyed it. In no world did I think it was anything I would pursue. I graduated. I was going to work a few jobs, save a bunch of money for that hike I was going on. And I got an email from my professor saying he had sent my pages to his agent and editor. And then they both, I guess, like wanted full manuscripts just to see, which was so cool. But also, I was like, I don't know how to do that or even what this means. But it seemed like the kind of thing you should just say yes to. So I dropped one of my 3 jobs and I wrote a book really fast, and it was so bad. It was like really terrible. I wrote it in like a month and a half or 2 months in Austin. And then I sent it back to them, and I actually got, and I sent it to a bunch of other people. I think I got some rewrite requests, which at the time I thought was a rejection, but now I'm like, oh, that's kind of crazy. But I was going on my hike by the time I got those emails. And so I kind of thought the whole thing was dead in the water and wasn't really what I was planning to do with my life anyway. And then when I was hiking, which was a number of months, I just kept thinking about how much I liked writing. And I remember I met another hiker on the trail and he said, what do you want to do after this? And I said, I think I want to be a writer. And I remember it like really surprised me. And then I got off trail and I spent a number of months rewriting it a bunch. And then I applied to grad school 3 times. And then I got into grad school eventually. And then after, I guess I didn't touch American Rapture again until like after, once I was in LA. So there's that. It's kind of like, it was many years. And then I only kind of revisited it. I wrote a vampire trucker novel in grad school that is mostly takes place in Massachusetts. Maybe I'll revive that one day. And I was sending that out for a very long time after grad school, and I ended up getting a manager, like a film manager, not an agent. Agents still would not touch my work. Got a film manager with that vampire book, and then he helped me rewrite American Rapture, which still wasn't even called that at the time, and still no takers. And then I wrote Maeve, and then that kind of changed the game. And then it got kind of brought back into the mix. So sorry, that was kind of a long, you may want to edit that down, but it was really like that. It was just sort of like, it kept getting thrown in and taken out and thrown in and taken out for a very long time.
I honestly think what you said and all the detail was all so relevant and
Oh, good.
interesting. And you said vampire trucker, which I feel is like a positive trigger word for Bob. Like that feels like exactly the type of thing that Bob in particular would love to read. I mean, I want to read it too, but I was watching Bob's reaction to Vampire Trucker.
Yeah,
I
I'm
gotta
about to
read
break
that.
my CB radio out.
Are you a
Breaker,
trucker?
breaker. What's that?
Are you a trucker?
No, but that whole aesthetic, and
Yeah.
especially vampire trucker. I mean, that's one of those ideas that if you write this and it comes out, that like Keith Rawson's probably going to get pissed off. He's going to go, "Fuck! I could have done that." you know,
No,
you
I feel
need
like
to do this. My credit card is ready.
it was fun when I was working on it. I actually had this big fat like CDL course like prep book, and I was like, I'm gonna get my commercial driver's license and I'm gonna drive a semi truck while I'm finishing writing this, and who knows, maybe 2026 I'll bring it all back.
Well, then you need to do it because I mean, it's just it already feels like near dark, and so I'm like, okay, I'm so yeah.
Well, I hope I can make it half as good as anything Keith has done. And that guy's just on fire.
Yes.
Yeah, he spent many years with the independent presses doing things that are just as good as what he's been doing with the more mainstream presses. And then suddenly the writing world took notice, and it's just been magnificent to see that happen. I mean, we saw years before something similar happened with Stephen Graham Jones and Paul Tremblay. So it's just kind of testament really to the fact that we have to keep plugging away. We have to keep writing hard, and eventually one hopes somebody will notice us. And
Yeah.
sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, but we're kind of doing it for the love of the craft of writing.
Yeah, and that's got to be the thing to come back to. I mean, when I was in grad school and after, everyone was like, "What are you doing sending out horror? Like nobody wants horror right now." And I was told that all through school, and then even when I was querying, like I'm telling you, I got hundreds of emails from people saying, "No, we don't want horror. We don't want vampires. It's never going to be vampires again." And it's incredible, how the nose, it can be just like an ocean of nose, and then one day the tide turns. And I don't know, all those guys were sort of like pioneers, who really paved the way for people like me to be able to step in at the time that I did. But it's amazing how suddenly the world took notice of horror and said, "Oh, actually, it's the only genre that we don't consider perennial. Why is that? It's the only genre that we've sort of relegated to like 1 month of the year or one small shelf, or said like we don't have room for it at Big Fives." And uh, I think they've all realized they were missing out, and it's a really cool time to get to be a part of it.
I think so. And I think one of many things that makes horror so fascinating is it's probably the one genre where we can absolutely unflinchingly tell the truth. It is a place where transgressive fiction is not only embraced but encouraged. And I think, particularly in what is bizarrely becoming a post truth world, the necessity for storytelling and for authenticity has become more vital.
Yeah, I think you're right. And catharsis is just as vital too. I mean, it's like horror allows us to confront the things and escape the things, and we know that we'll always walk away at the end of the book. Our characters might not, but we will. And there's a lot to be said for that, given the uncertainty of that in life. So I think it's a beautiful thing.
And I imagine too, if you talk about, it being cathartic, it must have been very cathartic and perhaps liberating to write American Rapture and to just expose and to have a response to this kind of Catholic upbringing that you had.
Yeah. The coolest thing about writing that book is that I started it when I was 21 and I finished it when I was 31. And I think being 21, I was still really close to, like, I remembered the teen feelings. I remembered that turmoil of that time period in my life, in a way that probably never could access now. But I also got to finish it in my early 30s and write some of the adult perspectives and some of what they were saying, those characters were saying to Sophie. And so it was kind of like, it was like a decade of my grappling with something and my evolution all in one book, which is even more a reason why no author should ever despair, because it was only because of all the no's that book ended up being what ultimately I think it was really meant to be. And I'm actually very, very grateful that it took so long to come out, because if it had come out in my early 20s, like, it would have been fine. It would have been fine. But as it is, like, I get to meet people and hear their stories and hear what they've been through. And I think I put something out that I feel proud of. So, the right thing comes out at the right time.
Yeah, I've heard people say before that a no now is just paving the way for a greater yes in the future.
Yeah,
I like that idea. Whether it is or is not true, I like living like that. And it makes these so called rejections a lot easier to deal with.
yeah,
And I mean, I wonder too, would you say that having that distance between your childhood and then kind of finishing it at 31, do you think that allowed you to be more fearless in the writing and more scathing in your critique of religion?
for sure. And there's a scene in which one of the adult characters is talking to Sophie, Cleo, the character, in a hotel room. And it was the very last thing I put into the book. And it was kind of like my it feels a little cheesy to say it this way, but it felt very powerful to me. It felt like me sitting down and thinking, like, okay, what is the thing I would tell to my, like, teenage self who's really entrenched in this right now. And I sat down and I wrote it, and it never really got edited, that section. And that ended up being kind of like my final stamp I put on the book. And I just thought, okay, that's it. And I really kind of spoken, like, my truth as an adult. And that was a great gift to be able to do that. That was very cool.
And just to get a sense of the timeline and your writing trajectory, would that mean, since you finished it at 31, that in between starting and finishing American Rapture, that you completed Maeve Fly, that it went from rough draft to finished product to be published?
Yes, Maeve was very fast. So I wrote the timeline's very weird. So, like, I sold Maeve 2 years before it came out. Uh and I wrote it, obviously before that. So I wrote it starting in October 2020. I finished it in it was so fast. It was like it just clawed its way out of me. I was so angry at everything. And I probably finished it by January, and then I did an edit round with my agent. And I got an agent with Maeve. That's what it was. So I did edit rounds with my manager. I ended up getting an agent probably in April or May, and then for the first time ever. And Maeve was the third book I had written and completed. And then in the summer, we sold it to Nightfire, and it was a 3-book deal. And that day was insane because we knew leading up to it, it would be a 1-month thing. And we had a set day. And I woke up in the morning, and I didn't know if I'd get any offers. I had had a couple meetings. I knew Kelly, my editor, was the person I really wanted to work with. We just vibed well. And she was the least traditional seeming of all of the publishers, and this was the first horror imprint at a Big Five, and so that was like my dream. And I woke up in the morning, and I did get one other offer. It was a lovely offer. It was so nice. It was with a publisher who it would mean that my books would not be in any indie bookstores or Barnes and Nobles, which has kind of always been my dream, is just to be able to walk into bookstores and see my books, much more than anything else with this job. Um, and so that I was like, but you know what? But I got an offer. Like, I felt so great. I thought, okay, this is going to be okay. And then there were like 6 hours left, and silence. No other offers, nothing. And I was like, okay, I think that's what we're doing. That's fine. Like, I'm going to have a book in the world. Um, it won't look the way I thought it would, but who cares? It's a yes. And then immediately, like I would say in the last like 20 minutes of our auction period, we got an offer from Nightfire. And when I tell you, like I didn't even open my curtains this day. I was in my sweats. I was like such a mess pacing. And my boyfriend has a video of me answering the phone and getting the call. And I was just like crying. So that was the greatest thing ever. But yeah, so sorry, that was a long story, but that offer was for 3 books. So the 3 books ended up being Maeve. Then we kind of rebirthed American Rapture, and then Headlights, which is coming next. So it was like total fairy tale after 7 years of sending out.
Yeah, I mean, for you to get that offer in the last 20 minutes, I mean, what a literal cinematic ending to that auction period.
Right? It was crazy. It was like the dream. So, yeah, I feel I'll never not be grateful for that.
And so I wonder, in American Rapture, when did you know that this sexually propagating viral epidemic, which is a hell of a mouthful,
I
well,
know.
there's an interesting pun, was going to be part of American Rapture, and how did the shape of this virus transform alongside the writing?
That was actually one of the only parts that didn't change. Yeah, so when I started writing this book, I wanted it to be just really like a retelling of Inferno and the Divine Comedy. And I kept thinking about this idea of like the lover's whirlwind and sort of like bodies in the wind. And I knew that there were illnesses that can sort of like attack parts of our brains, right? We know this, that can kind of change behavioral patterns. And I think I thought early on it would be crazy to have, as a young person, a young woman or young person in a religious environment, like the scariest idea is possession, but also any other kind of forced physicality, obviously like sexual assault, anything where like your body is kind of taken from you. And so I put that into zombies. I made this fear of sexuality into something like very kind of literal and physically omnipresent. And so that was kind of my working through it. The part that changed was with COVID. I actually kind of, I mean, everything was kind of there. Like I knew there would be I thought there would be vaccine backlash. I grew up in the land of don't tell me what to do. And so I suspected that people would not like being told to get vaccines. And I thought there would be uh, uh, religious figures weighing in on things. So all of that was always there. The only thing that changed with COVID was like I didn't realize, first of all, masks. I didn't think masks would be such a big part of things, and which is funny because like of course they would. But also I couldn't really predict what the internet would be like in COVID times, like the way that people kind of turned on each other, and even forums like Nextdoor. The Nextdoor app was like brutal in our neighborhood, just neighbors being horrible to each other and uh, yelling at each other about shots or masks, or it was just like everybody became everybody's enemy. And that was what I couldn't predict. But the actual virus, shots, all that was all there the whole time.
So it's almost a bizarre situation where if COVID hadn't happened, the book would be a little different as to how it is.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, you could probably argue that with anything because everything that happens kind of, affects the writer. And then you're like, um, yeah, that would greatly change the book. But I didn't mean to be in any way prescient about that. And I hope with any of my horror novels, I hope I'm not prescient about anything. I hope nothing I write ever comes to be true. Yeah. Weird time. Weird time,
Oh,
COVID.
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. Was there any editorial pushback considering COVID? Because I remember seeing some people online talking about how they had tried to work COVID into a novel, and one of the big five said, "No, you're not
Mm.
working this into the story." And they're like,
Well,
"But it's something that happened." They're like, "Yeah, but not. We're not going to go there."
yeah, I think so. So there were coronaviruses, before COVID-19. And
Mm-hmm.
so I named the virus in my book like COV something else, and which I can't remember now. And so I think people took that to mean that our COVID pandemic had already happened in the timeline of the book, which wasn't really my intention, but also I don't really care. So um, yeah, nobody pushed back, but we also, I mean, the book was already kind of done. It was like a weird thing, but in my other books I just pretend COVID didn't happen, because that I pretend nothing in our actual timeline in the last 4 years happened, or 5 years, 6 years. Oh my gosh. It's 2026.
Yeah,
Just
that's
because I
crazy.
want to write my own, version.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Yeah.
wondering how much of this novel did you plan before writing it, and how did you keep track of all the characters? Because I mean, keeping track of characters in a regular story is one thing, but in an apocalyptic setting, different rules apply.
Yes. The cool thing again about a book taking so long is like you start to get to know the characters so innately and intimately that you're like, I mean, I know those characters better than I know anybody in Maeve in a lot of ways, because I just sat with them for so long. What was hard, and what I had no idea would be so hard, is the logistics of like clothing items, like a jacket. It's a fucking nightmare. Like there were scenes where it was like, okay, but Sophie's jacket was ripped here, but it's vital that actually in this next scene it's sitting right here. And it, like, the keeping track of items was crazy, and items that would have bodily fluid spatter on them, that was also very important. I did see some meteorologist reader said that I got the whole tornado thing wrong. um, I was in a tornado as a kid and I did it the way that I thought I remembered it, but apparently that was wrong. But it's funny. It's like it is keeping track of so many things. But I storyboard with characters. Like I like them each to have their own arc and their own like wants and wounds and fears, and I love doing that for all of them. And so I really enjoy getting to know the characters as much as I can, and really thinking like, okay, but would they do that, or would they take a step forward in this scene, or would they hang back, or it's shuffling. But I think the found family aspect and the sort of like communal dynamic, I would love to write another book like that actually. I really enjoyed that.
And so I'm guessing the planning process and the writing process was wildly different for Maeve Fly, which, you said that you wrote from, I think it was October to January. So such a quick burst for that first draft. So, I mean, are you typically someone who plans novels, or are you a pantser, to use the bizarre vernacular?
uh I had a teacher once say, "You never learn how to write a book, you only learn how to write the one you're working on." And that has very much been my experience. Which is to say, I every book has been just like a completely different thing. And certain books I will try to either like really plot it, or I'll be like, "You know what? I'm just going to rip it. I'm just going to like write as much as I can." And they'll just, I find, at least for me, like they'll tell me, they'll be like, "No, that's not working." Or I'll get stuck, or I'll come up against something, or I can feel when something really is working. And with Maeve, I just plotted the whole book in like 2 days. It was crazy, maybe 3 days. And there's not much plot. It's not much happens. It's like change is coming. She doesn't want change. That's it. That's the whole book. And then when change does inevitably come, because that's life, she acts out and responds. And that's kind of the entire plot, spoiler, of Maeve Fly. Um, so it was easy. And then I had a lot to say. I'm not a person who historically ever really let myself feel angry. Um, it's like very against the culture I grew up in, like in the South, in a religious space, like especially as like a female, you just kind of don't express anger because even like angry women were always talked about as something you like really didn't want to be. And Maeve was kind of like my whole life of anger put into one book, probably. And I had lost people. I was feeling very out of power in my life. And I couldn't sell a book. And I was like, where's my life going? And then that's how it happened. So there wasn't much process there. It was like a vomit of book and then like a painful one. And then I was like, oh, it's there. And a lot of it wasn't edited that much. Like it's pretty crazy. The first 2 pages are exactly the same as they always were, except for the IP that we had to change for that very litigious company.
Am
Theme
I not
park.
allowed to say that company during this conversation? Because
You
it
can
kind
say
of,
anything. I just won't.
yeah.
I can't. I'm not going to corroborate it.
Okay, well, we'll see then how your answers to some of the questions go
Pretty good
on
at
that
this
basis.
right
Yeah, yeah.
now.
And I mean, you spoke about you never really learn how to write a book, just the book that you're writing. And so, on that basis, I wonder what lessons did you learn writing American Rapture that made you a better writer? And equally, as we're now also segueing into Mayfly, what lessons did you learn writing Mayfly that made you a better writer?
I think with American Rapture, I mean, I learned how to map. I learned how to create like very detailed timelines. I learned how to think systemically. Like you have to think systemically. You have to think about in an apocalypse book. When would you realistically lose power and why? And when would you have cell service and why? And the movements of government groups, the movements of everyone, like all of it is actually really has to be thought through. Um, Sidebar, I also played, I always forget the name. I don't know if it was Pandemic or Contagion. There's like a computer game where you can simulate a viral like pandemic or epidemic. It's really fun. And you basically try to create a virus that spreads across the earth as fast as possible, which seems less fun now post COVID. But pre COVID, I played it a lot. So I learned to think systemically. And then I also always try to have any scenery reflect what's happening internally with the character. And I learned that from reading specifically Victor Laval's book, The Changeling, is my favorite example of this because every scene in there like is a little subterranean. Even some of them will be like just taking a few steps down into a Starbucks. Like there's always this subterranean quality in every setting reflects what's happening in the characters in that moment. So trying to do that in American Rapture with this like roadmap was so fun. Learned a lot about that. Learned a lot about ensemble casts. I knew I wanted that cast to be diverse because that was a lot of the story was Sophie meeting people who weren't like her. And also I feel very strongly I'm putting out a book a year. I don't want every character to be exactly like me, but also I don't want to be I shouldn't be trying to write the experience of it another type of person. So that was an interesting kind of dance to try and diversify my cast, but not speak for any experience that I haven't had. And we had sensitivity readers. So that was like a whole fascinating thing. But Maeve, I don't know. Uh, it's like not to sound like a crazy person, but like I didn't tell Maeve to do anything. It's almost like Maeve existed and somewhere in me, and just was like, this is how it's going to go. And I think if anything with that book, I just learned like, don't get in my own way, like the story's there, just let it go. There were days when I would just close all the curtains and like drink from the moment I woke up, because I just thought I just have to get into such a state for this scene. And some of the scenes were so gross and brutal, but they were what I felt like they had to be. And so I don't know how to say that in a more practical way other than just like not impeding myself, like not ever letting myself question, is it too much? Did it go right or whatever, but just pushing forward.
Well, I have to ask, what was the most fucked up thing that you discovered when writing Maeve Fly that you didn't include in the book?
Oh, well, so I want to write a Maeve 2, which is not a secret. And I do have some really good kills. I don't know if my publisher will publish Maeve 2, which is also not a secret. But it's interesting with horror. In sci-fi fantasy trilogies, series do so well, and in romance they do so well, and in thrillers and mysteries they do so well. But for some reason in horror, like it's an interesting thing. I think people have trouble getting a foothold, and some of them are very successful, but we just don't have very many. So anyway, that's a bit of an aside, but I would love to make Maeve a trilogy. So all to say, maybe I can't share with you because I have some really good ones and I want to hold on to them. But I did learn a lot about um like musculoskeletal attachments. Specifically, I have a cousin who's a doctor and she's so great. I will text her and be like, hypothetically, if someone did this to this person, she'd be like, oh, okay, yep, this would happen, this would happen. Here's a chart, here's a diagram. Here are some other options. If she were to do this, this would happen instead. And I get like all this really bloody, awesome stuff. So yeah, I've learned a lot about those sorts of things.
And it's exciting to hear that there will hopefully, fingers crossed, be a second book and possibly a third book. So, yeah, I hope that Maeve will be one of the exceptions that will do tremendously well as a trilogy. I mean, we have a few of them. We have
Yeah.
Stephen Graham Jones's
Yeah.
trilogy. And maybe he's done a couple of trilogies at this point. I don't know. He's doing a new book seemingly every week, and
I know,
of
he's
course,
amazing.
yeah,
And that trilogy is so good, and Keith Rawson did the duology.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
Liz
Eric
Kerrigan's
LaRocca
duology,
too.
Eric, yeah.
Mm.
Yeah,
So
so who knows? Maybe.
yeah, no, I certainly hope so. And I mean, I wonder because you've obviously got this really strong protagonist and really memorable protagonist in the shape of Maeve, and you've also got this really strong location that, for legal reasons, we can't say what it might be based on.
The theme
So
park, yeah.
yeah, the theme park for some could be the happiest place on earth. For others, maybe hell on earth. But which came first? Was it Maeve or was it the location?
But it was all there. I knew, so I had only been to the theme park that doesn't exist one time as an adult when I wrote the book. And I was with my goddaughter was visiting. She was like a year and a half old. And we went to the castle of the Ice Queen and her sister. And we waited in line for like hours to see these girls. And this snowman song played the entire time. It was like that song and the song from the movie about the old man and the balloons who like loses his wife in the beginning. And it was like that wife losing scene was like on a loop. It was the craziest thing. And it was the only AC in the whole park where we were. Anyway, it was hours of this. And I just remember looking around being like, what am I doing here? And we get there and meet the princesses. And I think it really occurred to me for the first time, these are like 20-year-old girls. These are like young women in Los Angeles doing this every day. And it just stuck with me, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. And then when I started writing Maeve, I wasn't thinking about the park. I was thinking about Story of the Eye mostly, and I really wanted to rewrite Story of the Eye. I was visiting family in New York in October, and I was walking in the leaves, and I was so mad about something, and I was talking to my boyfriend, and I said, we need a woman to write Story of the Eye. That's what we need, which is like, I don't know in what world that would fix anything for anyone ever, but that's what I decided I needed. And so I started writing it, and I just instantly knew that was her job. And so they were unrelated things, but that's how Maeve was. It was just like everything coming from everywhere and just like clicking in my brain.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have drawn comparisons to Maeve Fly with American Psycho, and I've seen a similar thing happen with Eliza Clark's Boy Parts, and I feel there's
Yeah.
almost this fantastic, I guess, genesis of rageful female empowering horror, and that's kind of what you are at the start of this movement.
I guess so. It's funny. I haven't read Boy Parts, and I absolutely like have to.
You should.
Everybody
It's
says
so
it's
good. It's
amazing.
so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think by the time I finished Maeve, I thought I cannot ingest any more content like this. You know what I mean? Like just for my own mental health. Um, I usually read when I'm working on something like Maeve. I just read like romance novels on the side just to like cleanse my brain. But I've heard it's amazing, and as far as that wave goes, I mean, I felt like my editor, Kelly, is really fearless. And there was, I don't know how to say that. This is where I might get in trouble. There was pushback. Um, I'm not sure that everyone wanted her to buy Maeve. And other editors who were interested in Maeve were told by their publishers they could not buy it. There were concerns, and it was the obviously the litigation aspect with that company, but also just it was extreme. And I think, I don't know, Boy Parts wasn't out yet, you know what I mean? Like there just wasn't really anything, at least that I had seen, just like it. And so everyone was nervous, and they held it for 2 years. Like there was like an interesting, like we really kind of waited to put it out. And I think Kelly is a visionary, like more than me. Um, and she just seems to have a knack to know what's going to hit right in the right moment. And she's pretty amazing. And it's awesome. Biggest perk of my job is getting free books of like all the other authors that work with my editor. So that's the greatest thing ever.
Yeah, and I think Boy Parts and Maeve Fly, they complement one another so much. I think probably one of the reasons is because they both have such a distinct sense of place. So whereas Maeve Fly is set in America and in this distinct theme park that is not based on somewhere real, that's just a coincidence. And Boy Parts is in Northern England, and it's such a strong Northern English voice. So, that they are complementing rather than competing with one another.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and I never feel books really are competing, because it's always, you're always kind of putting forth like your own voice, you know? I gotta read it. I really can't wait to. And I've also not read Victorian Psycho, which is the now everybody's been talking about. So
right. Yeah.
very
Yeah.
excited to read that too.
Yeah. No, that keeps popping up everywhere on social
Yeah.
media.
Yeah. People say it's wild.
I've heard of that, but I haven't heard of Boy Parts.
Oh,
And
really?
Oh, Bob.
I haven't. Uh, but when I was in reading Maeve, uh, the trans. I mean, you spend a lot of time getting us to really get into her character and where she's coming from and what she's doing, and I think that's extremely important because when you slide down the slope of where the story's going to go, if you didn't care about the character, you wouldn't give a shit about anything that happens after that. And so I think that's real important that we have a grounded character that people can relate to, who slides into, I guess, an American Psycho version of madness, you know. And then when you were talking about it, there's might be a Maeve too. You probably already know, but there is an American Psycho too. Not the movie. No, I'm talking about a book. It's called Lunar Park.
I love Lunar Park.
Lunar Park
It's so
is
good.
fucking amazing. This girl I was dating, we got into a big fight, and she was trying to make up with me, and I was being very stubborn. And she heard a knock on my door, and she called me, and I seen her calling, and I'm like, okay, and I went to voicemail, and she goes, I was at your door. I do not want to talk to you. I left you something that you need to read. And it was Lunar Park. She went and bought it. And I was like, and I started reading it immediately because I didn't even know about the book. And I'd already read American Psycho. And I was like, holy shit.
It's so good.
It is so fucking good. Have you ever read it, Michael?
Yeah,
Lunar Park?
I have read the vast majority, if not everything, by Bret Easton Ellis. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the only one I have not read is Glamorama. But however, I think the name for some reason felt like a barrier to me. But everybody says it's like so good. I feel like I love everything else.
Yeah, here's the thing too. I was thinking more of Poppy Z. Bright's Exquisite Corpse.
Mm.
And then, and we get to the part in Maeve where she says those two words, and it's a name, and I don't want to spoil anything, but I was like, oh, we're going here. How, because I'm notoriously, it's on record, I couldn't finish Exquisite Corpse. I don't know if you ever read it.
No, I'm gonna make a list over here of everything I need to read.
It is probably it's a very, very important story. I couldn't finish it. It's gross. It's just it's stomach churning. It's I don't know. I mean, it's like I've never read the girl who lives next door. I know that's like it's crazy.
The Girl Next Door, Jack
Yeah,
Ketchum.
yeah. I've never read it because I feel like that I'm too sensitive to that kind of stuff, and I think it would probably hurt me. But Exquisite Corpse, I'm like, oh, I can handle this, and this all. I got about 2/3 of the way through, and I'm like, nah, I'm done, and it's beautifully written. It is just stomach churning to me.
Love it. Can't wait.
Since we're talking about, pushing the limits of grossness and extreme horror, I'm wondering, did you ever self-censor yourself, or did your editor ever censor you writing Maeve Fly and indeed writing American Rapture?
Never in Maeve. One scene in American Rapture. There was, the scene on the highway with the two guys in front of her when she's in the car. That scene went one step further at first, or half a step further. So sorry about my dog. And she was like, we got to pull it back a little, just a little. It was half a sentence I think we took out. And I think if they're flagging it, I'm not really fighting them. I'm like, okay, no problem. I don't want to. Yeah, it's a fine line always, especially with American Rapture, because it did have to deal with, like, the whole thing was about sexual assault, and you really don't want to. I tried really hard to handle that in a way where, like, I told the story but wasn't ever gratuitous with it, and I hopefully we kind of pulled it off. But yeah, with Maeve, never. It was just like, that's what those scenes are. I would get a lot of like margin notes, like, oh my God, disgusting, amazing, whatever. It's a horror imprint.
And I love just in terms of, I suppose, the mythos surrounding the publication that they waited 2 years to even release it.
Yeah, and that was an because like it was COVID, but also the imprint had just started. So there were like, do you remember there were issues with paper and like things getting stuck on shipping boats? I mean, it was like such a weird time. So I don't know that it was strategic in terms of the content, but maybe they do kind of tend to think that way, and it's interesting. And they try to give me a full year lead up time for each book now. Like I have to have it finished a year before it comes out so we can like properly market it and everything. By the way, I don't know how any author is so great about these book a year schedules. I'm trying to do it now, and like it's crazy. I don't know how people, like every horror author there is, can crank out like 1 to 3 books a year, and I'm like, la-di-da, this one took me 10 years, this one took me 5 years. So wish me luck that I can like get my shit together a little more moving
I'm
forward.
slow too. Don't feel bad.
You are good. Okay.
Yeah, like
You feel better.
I just had a book come out last year, and it was the first book I had come out in 6 years. So it's
There
like,
you go.
I just take my fucking time, and you know what? And it's like, whatever, shit's got to cook.
Shit's gotta cook. That's absolutely. Also, okay, I'm gonna hold on to that line and
Yeah,
bring it back in my meetings.
there you go. Shit's got to cook.
And so you've got Headlights coming out next. And
Yeah,
so that is, I presume then that must be the third book in the 3 book deal.
yeah.
So do you, as you said, you have to have, the book written a year in advance? Does that mean you have another book that is now ready to go in terms of hoping for another 3 book deal? Or is that shit still cooking, to borrow Bob's terminology?
I'm gonna say like yes, a little bit to all of those things. I have another 3 book deal now. So that was a very cool thing that happened after Rapture came out. So I've got 3 more books with Nightfire, so 6 total. Um Theoretically, books 4, 5, and 6 should come out each, the next whatever 3 summers after Headlights. I handed in the first half of my 4th book with an outline of the rest, literally like 4 days ago. So I'm a little disheveled today. I did that, and then I went to my best friend's wedding, which was amazing. And then the last 2 days I have been sleeping and watching Bridgerton and reality TV and like totally rotting, and it's been awesome. But the 4th book is a New York book. So finally I'm going after my New York self, which will be fun. After Colorado, Headlights is we're going to talk about Headlights. I think we're talking another time, right?
Oh, yeah. We're not going to do that in the last 12 minutes. It's like, and we're going to talk very quickly because we've got to cover Headlights in 12 minutes. No, that
Good. We'll
will
save.
be in a few months. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's fun that like they're all very different flavors, they're all very different kind of worlds to get to live in for the periods of time that I get to live in them. So I'm excited. I'm excited for you all to read the next ones, and it's fun to get to talk about the 2 that are out, because it's like I don't even remember the version of me that wrote either of those books in a way, because just time passes.
Yeah. And when
So
you sold the second 3 book deal, how was that process? I mean, did you provide a detailed outline for the New York book and then give a vague idea for the other 2? Or is it a case of, well, my last 2 books did pretty well. Do you want to sign me up for another 3 and we'll discuss the content at a later date?
yeah, as is always the way of things, like I handed in I have like 9 or 12 books I want to write. They're all kind of, and they're all by state or region. That's kind of my project. And I made this whole list. It was super detailed. Each book, like, here are a few sentences for each book, but I've got the books in my mind. And then at the last second, I was like, you know what? I could probably write like something like New York art world, like cursed painting possession book or something. And I just wrote like a little sentence. And of course, it was like, okay, we want that one and then 2 undetermined ones. So that I was like, oh shit, I don't like really have an idea for this book. So yeah, that's the New York book. And then the next 2 we don't know, but I have a bunch lined up. Could be a Florida book I have, could be this Appalachia book I have, could be this Oregon book I have. I'll get to Texas eventually, but that's like I gotta work my way up to the home state.
Yeah, I feel that I always have multiple story ideas in various forms, and it's always the one that is least fleshed out that people are like, yeah, that's the one I want. What is it? It's like, well, it's kind of the one sentence I just gave you.
So funny, I know. And it's the first book where I'm not really working out like a major emotional problem. I mean, I'm kind of asking the question, what is art? And what is like the meaning of being an artist? Which I guess is like a pretty big, these are big questions, but I'm not like raging in this book. So it's a new experience. And I wonder if you have that as well, that some just feel, some are more fun and some are more emotional, and it's just kind of always different.
I like books about art, whether it's painting or music. I mean, shit, I'm working on something right now that's combining jazz and the occult. So,
Oh, cool.
you know, I love that kind of stuff. And I like the idea that you're doing it by location because it allows you to have setting as character. And that is real big to me too. It's something that I really like to see. So I'm real interested in this possession art world in New York type
Thank
story.
you.
There's a lot of history there that can be tapped into.
A lot of history. I hope it's good. I hope people like, it's, you never know. I mean, I wonder if you guys have this experience. Like, I never know if anyone's going to like what I'm working on. And you just kind of put it out and say, this is what I had in me, and see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, this is pretty much the experience I have with every book. And, from talking to different writers, it seems to be an almost universal experience that it doesn't matter how well you do, it doesn't matter how many awards you win, or whether you're a New York Times bestseller. There's always a little part of you that's like, what if I'm faking it? Or what if I've ran out of good ideas? What
Yeah,
if, that there were 2 books in me and and that's it. So I I tend to find though it's a healthy place to be, really, to not quite know if this is the one or not, because if you're so arrogant as to feel like, wow, this is definitely a great book, it almost certainly fucking isn't. And if you genuinely think, yeah, this is terrible, well, you're probably right. So to be in that murky
yeah.
in between stage, it's good for the art, but maybe not so good for mental health and well being.
I don't know that mental health is conducive to being the best artist. I don't know. I mean, I think that's kind of the question I've been asking myself, is like, and obviously you want to find happiness and mental health in life, but like, I don't know. I think for me, I guess a question I'm pondering these days is like, is it not a bit our job as horror writers, especially, is it not my job to sit and look at death sometimes and really think, like, what is this, and what is fear, and what is mortality? And those things are hard to ask, but maybe those are the questions I'm meant to be asking as a horror author, and maybe then I can kind of bring that back to the world. And if it's a bit of a strain in the moment, ultimately I think it can bring a lot of fulfillment. So maybe. One of my dogs they've been so present in this, I apologize. One of them is digging a burrow in the couch right now. So sorry if you can hear that.
It's so good, and they're rescue dogs. They've had a hard enough time as it is. We're not gonna reprimand them on this as horror.
No, they're the
And
best.
I mean, we're coming towards the end of the time that we have together today, but we've got some questions from Sarah Langan via
Oh,
Patreon, and yes, the Sarah Langan,
yeah,
and
wow.
yeah, she's so we've covered a little bit of this, but not extensively. But she writes that she's curious as to what your journey toward becoming a writer was, and whether you wanted to do this as a kid, and what your formative influences were.
Wow, this I love her. It's I think we've covered some of it. Let me think maybe what I haven't talked about. Uh, I this sounds like a fake thing, but as a kid, I was really into Shakespeare, like Shakespeare movies. I really especially loved the Elizabeth Taylor Taming of the Shrew. Um, those watched those movies a lot, and I've always loved Shakespeare, and that's part of why I thought I wanted to be an actor in my early 20s, and I was doing that in New York in different Shakespeare productions around the city. And I never loved it as much as other actors did. It turns out I just love the language. But a thing about Shakespeare, besides just the sentences, which are so delicious and amazing and kind of light up my brain in such huge ways. I love the way the plays are structured and how we often have this like full cast act five, at the end that everyone is back on stage for some reason. And usually in a big setting, party setting, or back at the castle where it all began. And I always notice Joe Hill does it in his books. A lot of authors, do it now, but I love like a full cast big act five, and I think about that all the time. So I guess to answer the question, like all the influences we talked about before, but yeah, Shakespeare was like always my favorite, and I've always loved reading his work and kind of complicated human dynamics, and it's so funny. It's like really funny. Like it's very tragic. It can be very funny. It can be sexual. It can be sad. It can be people have a lot of anger, and it's kind of like this full spectrum of human emotion. And so, probably on some level, my whole life, I've been in love with writing because I've been in love with his writing. But I never thought maybe that I could do it myself. And it really took a lot of random turns. I went to a boarding school for performing arts before I moved to Manhattan. So I lived in Massachusetts, freshman, sophomore, junior years of high school. And I, it just, I loved it, but it never quite fit. And a teacher once pulled me aside at the end and said, I think you're smart. Maybe try college. And I had not planned to go to college. I didn't want to go to college. And then I was very lucky that person said that. I ended up going to college. And then, it's that same thing. Like I kind of stumbled into the writing. I don't know. Sometimes the universe just kind of opens doors. And I've been extremely lucky to have those doors open, and then I just always try to be listening and say yes when strange opportunities come, and I've been very lucky. I don't know, did I answer that question at all?
You did, and I think that Shakespeare and this intermingling of horror and humor and sexuality makes so much sense with your work. I mean, it's all baked into everything you do.
Yeah, I guess it is. I mean, I would like so hesitate to be like there's any I mean, it's just like I could never do what Shakespeare, whoever he or she was, or they, whatever they did was fucking amazing. But yeah, very influenced. I love language. Who doesn't love language? Like it's such a glorious thing that we get to try to communicate throughout this human life and these like big feelings that we're trying to put words to all the time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, before we go, as we said, Headlights is your next book, and we will be chatting about it again in a few months, or we will be chatting again in a few months about it. And so I'd love to know, what can you share with our listeners as way of a preview for Headlights, and why should someone pre-order it?
Well, first, I actually want to say, I should have said a second ago, I read Sarah Langen's most recent book, Trad Wife, and it's freaking amazing. Just as like everybody in the world needs to know that. It was one of my favorite things I read this last year. As far as Headlights goes, this is the book where I really I kind of looked the beast in the eye and said, what is death? And where do our loved ones go? And can we reach them? And do they want us to? And it's a Colorado book. It's like people are waking up on the side of the highway with no memory of how they got there, and they are naked and wearing the skin of someone they've never met, with a human hair tied around their tongues. And this is a phenomenon that's been going on for a while, on and off, and the detective in charge of it has to come back, try and solve the case finally, and face a lot of really horrific shit from his past in order to solve it, and gets kind of implicated in the case himself. And it's like very Colorado. There's tons of The Shining, very explicitly tons of The Shining. Lots of like horror fan Easter eggs in there, all the Colorado things. And there's also cannibalism and ghosts and yeah, all that stuff. There's a 20-page sex scene that I didn't have to cut down, which is insane. So there you go. Something to read for.
Yeah, I asked you to give us our reason why someone should
Oh, sorry.
pre-order, and you gave us all the no, as a compliment. It's like, why should we pre-order it? Because this book literally has everything. It has everything you've ever wanted in one book.
Mhm.
Maybe too much. It's long. I mean, I'm not trying to like unsell my book, but
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
but yeah, read it, please.
All right. Well, I wonder, where can our listeners and viewers connect with you?
I only really update my Instagram. So Siege the Moment is my Instagram. I'm gonna redo my website soon, theoretically, but we'll be announcing tour soon for the summer. So I want to meet people. Please come say hi.
All right. Seize that opportunity and go to
Siege
one of.
that opportunity.
Yeah. Okay. Well, do you have any final thoughts to leave everyone with?
No, I really loved talking to you guys. It's crazy. I thought we had talked before, but maybe I just had like a future vision of this great conversation we would have tonight. We
I
knew it was
don't.
always coming to this.
I mean, you explore many different facets in your fiction, and so maybe you have in the future explored some space-time continuum, and so you've had, what you're remembering is the conversation about Headlights, which we haven't had in this
Yes.
linear timeline.
And you know what? It's the best conversation ever, so everybody better tune in because it's that
Yeah. Yeah, I could not believe some of the insights that all of us had. It
good.
was like having some sort of psychedelic epiphany, quite frankly.
100%.
Mhm.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.